There's another topic that I wanted to touch on that I've been kind of pondering about. And it's the idea of maps. So when we are kids, when we are, toddlers, 3 and 4 years old, we are governed by an inner joy magnet. Occasionally we have to deal with disciplining. That's why you use behaviorism, because there's not a logical, you can't convince or explain to a kid, well, you see, if you do that, it eventually is going to build up plaque. And then the plaque, you have to be like, behaviorism. You get a gold star. Okay. Because we don't function at that time on a reason, a story-based view of the world. But we get to a point about 5 or 6 years old, and suddenly we start to care what people think. And maybe not so suddenly. It's actually gradual. I don't really remember. I'm making some guesses. And it's interesting that actually memory and this awareness kind of start to grow at the same time. Like, how many memories do you have of when you were 3? Like, really? But you begin to get aware of what people think and what other people think about you. And what other people are in our culture is this collection of status quo values and beliefs and expectations that are all external. And so we see ourselves as separate. We see ourselves as following this map towards happiness, because that is what the landscape is starting to point us to. Now, let me make a distinction there. There's a huge difference between the landscape and the map. And it's at that point, when we start going from internal to external, that becomes critical. You cannot study a map of the Grand Canyon and understand what the Grand Canyon is. It's impossible. A map is just a guide. And it is all sorts of things that are problems with maps. One of them is that built into it is whatever limitations the map builder has. Whether those be, quite innocent misunderstandings of what things are and myths of security or whatever. There's also built-in intentional misleading things in maps. So as we start following this map and we forget that there's actually anything but the map to guide us, it can be very easy to get spun off into the status quo path of achievement, acquisition, status. And then I believe the spiritual path is the one of then stripping away that external map until you start to realize, oh, I have a compass. But it's so loud, it's so powerful, it's so all-pervasive in our culture, especially if you watch traditional media. Keep in mind, traditional media is a map maker. And traditional media is an incredibly overlapping consortium of companies, corporations, and media corporations that have an incredibly deep motivation to give you a map that helps them out, that helps them maintain this system. Even if it's not overtly evil, it's the built-in intentions and needs and motivations of any system is to maintain itself. When you create a organization that's intention is to fight a disease, the organization itself will very quickly lose its motivation to end the disease, because its function is to fight the disease. Any organization falls into that trap of self-preservation. It's unfortunate. But it's another reason why it's so important to tune into our inner compass. We each have a little iron filing inside that is pulled towards as a magnet towards source, towards what we're to do. And that sounds like a crazy thing if you've never heard it before, if you've never felt it before. The map is so strong, it seems like crazy talk. All maps are pointing. There's a great Buddhist story that Buddhism, and in essence any faith, is a finger that points you to the moon. And Buddhism says, do not mistake the finger for the moon. It's just a tool. Buddhism, all the teaching, all the sects, all the practices, all the meditation, all of that, it's just a guide to get you someplace that we can't talk about. It's impossible. But it is so easy to see this finger, to see this map, and suddenly think, that's it, that's the absolute. This text is sacred and direct from God. How could it possibly? It's been filtered through a human being. It's impossible. All fingers, all maps are metaphorical guides to get us to the moon. And what we need to remember is that deep inside we have that iron filing that feels a gravitational pull to the moon. The maps can help immensely as long as they help. They can also steer you way off guard. Now, the key is trying to find practices that allow you to get more and more in tune with the the magnetic element of you being pulled towards the moon. It's in your nature. It's in all the universe has a flow to it and a balance and a harmony. And so when we can go back to strip away the external map and start to tune into our internal compass, get back to that childlike pursuit of joy, then we get to, well, we fall into purpose, we fall into love, we fall into service, we fall into a place of less about thinking our way through and making things happen. A map is a cerebral process. A compass is much deeper. I know that I'm in the process, as you know, have been for a long time, of trying to more and more figure out what of the motivations and feelings that I have are coming from the external map that I've been giving and how much is internal. Why am I motivated to do this? Is this an ego thing? Is this a desire to be this or that? Or is this a feeling of like, this just feels, this is right, I cannot argue with that. A lot of my recent struggles with political things is because the truth of this now, in this moment, the truth of compassion towards this individual, the truth of my oneness is absolute. The truth of a political and economic system, well, that's a story that I have to have faith in all sorts of information. That's a map that of places I probably will never walk, that I have to try to throw my, it just becomes way more complicated and way more an act of faith in people. Some of those people are in line with their hearts, and those people are walking towards the moon brilliantly. And some people will tell you that they are. Do not listen to the words. Listen to the actions and the eyes and the energy. I want to read a quick quote from a guy that you probably shouldn't trust. His name was Buddah. At least that's what they called him. He said, "Don't blindly believe what I say. Don't believe me because others convince you of my words. Don't believe anything you see, read, or hear from others, whether of authority, religious teachers, or text. Don't rely on logic alone, nor speculation. Don't infer or be deceived by appearances. Do not give up your authority and follow blindly the will of others. This way will lead to only delusion. Find out yourself what is truth, what is real. Discover that there are virtuous things and there are non-virtuous things. Once you have discovered for yourself, give up the bad and embrace the good." And so with that I say, please disregard everything I have said. It is, as always, in the belief buffet style, placed out on a platter for you to sample and taste. If it tastes good, chew on it. Maybe add your own spices to it. If it doesn't resonate, spit that out. But I can tell you that when we share these gatherings, whether they're the live broadcasts or just the knowledge of people tuning into archives, that the knowledge that there are other people tuning into that magnet, other people feeling that pull, that amplifies mine, that recalibrates me, that gives me strength against the media map, the falsehoods that steer us in the wrong direction. And so I, with massive gratitude, thank you for sharing this moment, for opening your heart, for pursuing your truth. Thank you for being exactly where you are on your path. Thank you for allowing yourself to be you. And in doing so, allow us all to be closer to our divine selves and the One. Thank you. I love you. Namaste. I've been T-League, I have been very tuned in with my grandpa lately. I've been watching a lot of his videos and really reappreciating his presence in my life always. It's interesting how for a period of time I felt very much like almost like I was using him as a marketing tool, almost like I didn't feel worthy of the stuff, but it just like people responded to it, so I would go ahead and keep and over the years, he passed in 2007. I now identify so strongly. I mean, I feel like I feel. I mean, I just feel like there's like that, like my magnet has been, magnetized by him. There's a pull that I feel that is kind of not a logical, oh, that's what Grandpa would do, but just like, right, this feels right, and then recognizing, oh, that's what Grandpa would do. It's been a little hard for me lately with the political things because he was so politically active while maintaining his sense of peace, and that has been a little bit of a challenge for me. And we have some differing beliefs on the degree in which the actions of the world, the inner versus outer world. We have a lot of differing beliefs. But that's one of the beautiful things about recognizing that a map is just a map, because then the map is a guide, and you apply your own experiences and allow it to be a directional guide. It's not about the specific signposts, it's about the direction you're going. Elabella says, so amazing that you were able to have that kind of relationship with your grandfather. It is so beautiful, and I'm so grateful that you decided to share it with us. Oh, it's an honor. It's really, it's a wonderful thing, because it's rare to get such a clear gift of, here's something you can do good in the world. I mean, I think all of us really want to feel like, what's our purpose? And so when I was given the opportunity to share him with the world, it was like, oh, well, that's a no-brainer. I don't have to think like, is this right? It's like, of course it's right. So it's kind of in the same way like when people say, oh, thank you for what you're doing with the homeless. It's like, well, I feel blessed. I feel like lucky that I have the opportunity to do something that is so clearly right. And I think that's what, the Buddha was saying in that quote, like, let go of it all and just start to figure out what is good, what is bad, embrace virtue. It's that simple. And so, these little examples of that have been, as I sit with them, become the strong things that dim out the exterior and amplify the interior for me. And then it becomes that strength that the world's voices become more and more muted as the more examples of that surface in my life. Yeah, it's funny. T-League says he was inside you all the time, but it took time. And it's something I wonder. I wonder, initially when we hung out a lot together, I knew that he was grateful for spending the time with me. He was grateful for the visitors. He was grateful for having companionship and for the technical help and being able to connect to the world, and he was grateful for all of these things. But I wasn't really sure how much we were connecting at times. He was a great storyteller, and sometimes you weren't sure how great of a listener he was, whether that was because of his hearing problems or just because he's been a preacher for so long. He's very much puts his energy out a lot, and I'm certainly guilty of that too. And I know both of us have been reminded to be better listeners. And so I sometimes now have been watching older videos and kind of tuning in to things where I'm like, oh, he was a lot more present with me than it felt like at the time. There were some subtle things or some, and so yeah, I think that he maybe was more aware of our similarities than I was at the time. We're both unique in our families, we're both by far the most, give us the microphone, for his, I think it was his 90th birthday, he reserved the art gallery at his retirement village. There's this one room that's an art gallery, and so people, they have oil painting classes and stuff, so they have these art shows throughout the year. And so he reserved the art gallery and put together an art show of his life. And he just had photos and newspaper clippings and pictures and just said, and had an opening. Come to the art show. This is my life. Which I thought was just about the coolest thing in the world. This recognition that, my path, my life, the way I've loved, the way I've put my energy in the world, that is my art. That is my gift to myself and the one, and my devotion is through my life, which is why, as he was approaching death, he was so joyous and happy and full and felt like it's just a gift, it's a gift, it's a gift, because he had spent so much energy in that space of, how can I be of service? When I initially started publishing online, and long before blogs, when I was starting to put stories and write things, one of my thoughts was trying to stay in the mindset of being a protagonist in my life story, trying to stay in the mindset of, I'm living my epic myth. What is the story that I would be proud to read? One last thought. I had this epiphany over the weekend that again, remember, belief buffet, you don't have to follow me. So let's say that there is God, there is a oneness, there is a perfection, unity, all-knowing, non-dual, beauty, bliss of the universe. There is a God, and we are it, and it is perfect. Now, that state of perfection would inevitably be boring. Non-dualism is static. So what would be the most or the least boring thing that you could do as God? Well, you could live a human life. Alan Watts talks about that is this kind of explanation of the universe, is that God, when he can have and do anything, would eventually experience human lives and give himself amnesia first, so he can go through this highs, lows adventure and try to wake up from this dream and realize that he is all of this. He is one. You are it. And everyone that you pass in the world is going through this, is another version, another experience, another instance of God having this adventure. And so, from that perspective, if you were going to script your life, if you were going to write the grand myth, the grand book of your one path of life, would you want it to be fluffy and boring? Or would you want it to be grand and amazing with highs and lows and adventures? I mean, while it's happening, you say, I want it mellow. I don't want any struggles. Please don't let this happen. I just want no more hardships, just happiness, happiness, happiness. But if you were from the outside writing it, you would say, hell yeah, give me a motherfucking dragon to slay. Make it badass. I want an adventure. I want Ulysses. I want fucking Cyclops and maidens and highs and lows and woes and near deaths and wah. That's why the epic myth is what travels through all of our cultures. That is the human experience. It's the God experience in a dualistic way. It is the gift of the adventure of humanity that we get to experience. So as you are slaying your next dragon, remember, you wrote this script. It's by choice. And you will be triumphant and glorious no matter what happens. I use a curse word. Sorry about that. I listen to a lot of Jacob Glass, and he curses a lot, which by the way, I highly recommend. Okay, so I'm going to pass on something that Jacob Glass said this weekend. JacobGlass.com is someone I've listened to for 10 years. He has helped me tremendously. I try to give him the credit a lot because he influences me, and I don't mean to steal, but occasionally I just repeat things that I've heard from him. But his last lecture was really powerful to me because he was talking about how he had the best night of sleep of his life, and the next night he had one of the worst. And the thing that changed was the second night, before he went to bed, he watched an hour or so of videos, and he wasn't clear about what, he was very vague, but I'm pretty sure he was talking about Occupy stuff and talking about getting sucked up into the financial stuff and feeling like all of this is this inequality, all this stuff, and he said it pulled him out of the vortex. The vortex is an Abraham quote about being in touch with the one and being connected and feeling joy and all. Pulled him out of the vortex into the state of the story of panic. And so he said he had to really work to get back. And what he said is stuff that I've been struggling with. He said, the only thing that we have control over is ourselves and our experience of the world. We get caught in the trap of trying to change the world to make it better. But remember what I just said, the world is our set. The world is our playground. The world is the game experience for us to have our adventures, to face dragons. The intention, the object of this game is to tune our vibration into divinity, into oneness, into source, and to get enough people tuning that vibration in that we get the vibration of the planet is in alignment. And then he said something that kind of blew my mind. He said, when that happens, the world will not shift into Shangri-La and we will just live in bliss. He said, the world will cease to exist. It will no longer serve its purpose. And that we will all reunite with Source. All right, well, as we approach the 2 o'clock hour and I am reeling from my own comments, I appreciate you coming along this ride and encouraging my behavior. It is, once again, an honor and a treat and a privilege. Heads are made to explode. That's one of the, one of the what was there something else I was thinking about this, that one of the grand gifts of like the hero's myth, the hero's journey is about a collapse or a failure or a low moment and then you come back from. Because it's important to have head exploding. It's important to have a loss. It's important to have, because we need to have something that shakes us and says, whoa, 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 this map is not truth. This is just a guide. You don't need to trust this. You need to trust something else. And having the world fall apart. It's one of the gifts of economic collapse. It's one of the gifts of a recession is that people go, okay, I had my faith in my 401k. I had my faith in money and my career. And now I realize that it turned its back on me. I have to return to a faith in something real and permanent and not changing, which is your spirituality. And if you don't have that, well, then a financial crisis is, well, it's horrific. But if you do have faith in what is real, then this is all just part of the game, and your goal, your objective is simply to, what did Buddha say? Find for yourself what is truth, what is real. Discover that there are virtuous things and there are non-virtuous things. Once you have discovered for yourself, give up the bad and embrace the good. And then you become an agent of good. You become an agent of love. It is not up to you. And it is not up to you to decide the scale of your acts. It is simply a matter of being in that space and then feeling the iron filing pull you. Thank you for letting that filing draw us together in this magnet miracle. I hope you have an amazing week. I'll be back at 6 o'clock. And otherwise, see you next Tuesday, or in the archives, or in the dream world, or peeking through your blinds. I love you.
You only live once. Enjoy the color.